At that stage that part is done, and I can put that mechanism plate aside because I need to deal with my shutter blades, which I have sitting loosely over here. Let's get them. These all need to be cleaned. I'll put them on a nice white piece of paper so you can't see anything. And 3 screws, one of which I've just noticed is shorter than its mates, and I'm sure I didn't take note of that when I was disassembling the shutter, so that'll be something to take note of as I reassemble it. Okay, so these blades are quite marked and dirty. The screws aren't much better. The screws to one side, they're a bit oily looking. See if these blades will clean up for me. I'm just using some naphtha. Well, that face cleaned up quite well. Much better than I expected at this face. Yeah, that went well too. Alright, doesn't look like these are going to be a fight. They're certainly dirty, but they're cleaning. Shutter blades are often suffer from surface marks from scuffing over each other, or simply corrosion. These appear to be good. Well, at least that one does. Let's get on to blade number 2. That looks good. The blades are quite highly polished and they're very thin, that steel that they're made out of, and they will stick together if there's any oil on the blades at all. It'll just act like a glue. And of course oil tends to be more viscous in cold weather than hot weather. So you can often have a situation where a shutter will work apparently normally on a hot day, and then the next cold morning you take your camera out, it won't do a thing. Those blades look good. One of the blades has quite a noticeable curl on the tail of the blade. That must be there because it's the first or third blade, or it's got to scoot over some part of the housing. Oh, let's have a quick look at this. Where do the blades sit? So the tail of the blade is going to run up into that cutout or that cutout. Over here we don't have such a cutout, but I suspect that's where that one went. Yes, it would have a lead up there. And I've got these blades, the housings marked here. I'll put my scratches in where each blade came from. 1, 2 and 3. So I suspect that's blade number 1. And I'm looking now to see about my screws, because as I said, one of the screws was longer than the others. or shorter than the others. Just take out that blade for the moment so it doesn't fall on the floor. I think that's number 1. I'm sure 2 and 3 will be identical. And I'm looking at the screw holes to see if any of them have any obstruction or reason that the short screw would be more appropriate. It looks like the short screw would be there on number 1. So we'll clean those 3 screws. Yes, these screws have a shoulder on them that the blade revolves around. All that area needs to be cleaned so that it does move freely. Just poking at this screw with the end of a toothpick. There was something crusty on there that's now gone. This shutter blade looks to be cracked. At the pivot point there, there's definitely got a crack in it. I don't like the look of that. I think I'm going to have to find a replacement from somewhere. It may work reliably, but I don't like its chances of longevity. Well, I've found an organ donor, so we'll steal a blade from this. Where did I say blade number 1 was on this one? It was that one. Okay. Let's have out blade number 1. I said that was the shorter of the screws on the shutter we're working on, and it's the shorter of the screws here. So we will swap out blade number 1. I think this is an even earlier shutter than this one. The blades will be the same. I'll put the one we're replacing back into my parts shutter. There may come a day when I'll be pleased to see that blade, damaged though it is. That can go back in the case. Which way did it go? That way. I've not got my screw holes lined up. Yeah. Just get one screw started and tuck that spring down where it should be. It's okay. Here I'm just reassembling my parts shutter that I stole the blade from. Spare parts are most useful when they're as assembled as you're likely to be able to get them. They're least useful when they are stripped down to individual parts, because it makes it harder to identify exactly what it is you are looking at and where it came from. So I'll clean my blade from the donor. And put it into the shutter. Fortunately, this is in quite good order. All of those 3 blades in that donor shutter were in quite good order. I don't know why that shutter came to be a donor. It may have come to me like that. I've gathered up a lot of parts over the years that people have given me, so they can be leftovers from failed repair attempts. Sometimes they are just leftovers because somebody bought a parts camera to furnish the pieces they needed for their own camera, and that the leftovers are strictly leftovers. They're parts they didn't require, and you're keen to see them go on to a new home. Here's number 2. But with 80-year-old cameras, you are very dependent on organ donors for parts. These screws are hard to get into place because they have quite a large head on them, but they're quite a small thread, so they're hard to get to stand up so that you can get them started. And that one doesn't want to play the game. Try a two-handed approach. Alright, do those blades swing out and back in neatly? Yes, they appear to. That can put the case in place now, I think. And the case goes on where? This way. Exactly there. Where are my screw holes? There they are. Alright, 3 screws in position, tighten the 3 screws up. check the blade actuating ring. Here the blade's open and shut. Nice and snappy, that action, that's very good. So that was a success. Now assembling all the rest of the levers. You can start with the B lever. Get its screw ready here. Now the spring on this acts against the tail of this little lever here. So getting this in position is often a bit tricky. Because then the spring wants to push the lever out of position, so I've got to push the lever back, drop the screw in, and hopefully get the screw started. No, that would be too easy. Yes. Screws down, the lever's in the correct place. The spring's even doing its job. That's good. Now, shutter release lever can go on next. Normally I want to lubricate the centre of that slightly with a touch of molybdenum paste. Now this has a little tiny return spring on it. Oh, that lever's sticking at its pivot point. Oh, it's alright once it's in position. It was when it was around from its normal position it was sticking. Just checking the action of this. When nothing's holding it back, it acts on the T position. One stroke opens the blades, the next stroke closes them. So that's working smoothly. I'll come back and put a touch of molybdenum paste on some of those surfaces shortly. These two pieces. This is the high speed spring, the 500th of a second spring. Well, what's it on this shutter? A 300th of a second. I'll put a bit of molybdenum paste through the centre of that, just so it will move smoothly on the post. Excuse me, not that it needs to move far. And the little return lever here, I'll put a spot where that runs on its pivot post. This has to go over that spring, and then the tail of this spring needs to tuck down into the case. Oh, it's thinking about it. So get the levers to drop in. Yeah, the lever's dropped into place. This end of it goes into the release lever there. That's good. Now the latch that holds the shutter in the cocked position goes here. I have to have a look at this in a second to see if I've got it in the right position. Yes, that looks right. There are no loose screws in there, that's all good. Hold down the release and that will expose the screw hole for this piece. If I can get it in position. Bit reluctant to push into place. Not sure why that oh, I probably should have loosened off the three case screws and put them back in again, or tighten them up again afterwards. It probably would have been fine. There's just some slight misalignment there. Run that screw down, that's good. So I'll put a touch of molybdenum paste on a few surfaces, and then we want the blade actuating ring and the speed setting cam plate, and the shutter will be done. Okay, I've been fed and watered, so I'm ready to carry on. Some molybdenum paste. Well, where that B lever catches there, I'll put a bit on there. Make sure that moves smoothly. That appears to work well. A couple more spots in here need to be addressed. On the tab on the top of the release lever there, the pallets, and this arm here which couples to the blade the main lever, that needs to have some on it. I think that's probably it. Where's my main lever? Here it is. Now the main lever, once round the inside, once round the outside, and I'm just wiping a tiny amount of molybdenum paste on there. On the tip of the bird paw and on the tail of the bird paw there. That should do it. So I'll fit my main lever into place. Make sure that it's not catching on anything. Hold back that, pop that down. That's okay. Why is it sticking here? That's okay. There, it's all sitting down, and I'll hook its spring over the post. Can you see any of that? I'm just about here. Got that problem with non-transparent fingers again. That spring does not want to go over the post. It's back in the rest position, yep. That's better. Okay, that's all sitting down. Get rid of that piece of paper so the exposure's even out a bit. You can see what's happening. Take some molybdenum paste once around the centre so that the adjustments will work smoothly. Around the cam surfaces that contact the retard gear train. And there's one spot where it picks up the high-speed spring right here. So I'll just put a touch in there. That should do. See if I can get the speed train in position. Make sure that the B lever is not trapped underneath it there. That's good. So around here that should be T. That should be B. This should be 1 second, and this is where we cock the shutter. I'd say that was a bit quick. Means I'm going to have to go in and do some adjustments. I will go and check that on the timer. It looks to be running a bit fast to me, and I haven't altered any of the adjustments, so it sort of suggests that possibly it was previously adjusted with the shutter not fully cleaned and cleaned, lubricated and working smoothly. The speeds are certainly I might not be far away. I might have had my alignment mark where I expected the speeds to be not quite correct. That's almost credible. Definitely sounds fast to the 10th. Certainly fast to the 25th. 300, that's when we've got our extra spring. It whips away. Alright, I'll go and check those speeds, find out exactly what's out and by how much. I think they're running fast, particularly the slower speeds. But I'll need to know whether the 1 second speed is incorrect, and the 10th certainly appears fast.